Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to David Bushe, who's the CEO of FIM Capital in the Isle of Man. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having us.
So terrific to talk to you today here on the promenade in Douglas. Before we get into our conversation about FIM Capital, you're relatively new into the role. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about your background and how you came to take up the position.
Yeah, great. Well, I joined FIM Capital in March 22 from previous employment in places like Barbados, Jersey, the Isle of Man and Johannesburg. I was very fortunate to be asked by the shareholders of the company to be the CEO, for which I started on the 1st of June. So
yeah,
it's
great,
pretty fresh for the audience. But we had a lead in time, and we had an excellent CEO who handed over a 6-month period. But I'm born on the Isle of Man, back in the 70s. I'm sad to say. I've done a lot of travelling. I've worked in various jurisdictions. But to be back home and to be the CEO of a very exciting investment and fund company is exactly where I want to be.
And you're excited about the opportunity of being back and what you see of the industry here, doing some excellent things. I mean, we've been here for a networking dinner last couple of days, talking to people. There's all sorts going on the island. Well, you know, when you came back and have taken this role, are you energised by what you see locally in the ecosystem here?
I'm really energised with what I'm seeing on the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
I think, earlier on in the conversation, what an understated jurisdiction the Isle of Man is.
Yeah.
If you look across fund administration, trustees, investment managers, there's a lot of highly skilled technical people on the island that I think we should, as an industry and sector, be shouting more about. And therefore, when I was asked to be CEO, was I excited? It was like seeing Father Christmas again, sort of thing. It was like, that sort of thing that you don't find very often in your 50s.
Yeah.
To say, wow, what an opportunity, what a chance to sort of showcase the Isle of Man further. What a way to build the economy, build a team, and build the Isle of Man's presence in terms of what we do here.
And the FIM Capital offering is quite unique. I mean, perhaps you could sort of unpack it a little bit and the different elements of the proposition.
Yeah, FIM, Funds and Investment Management. It's a very unique business in that from the asset management side, the business has grown in a very, very bespoke nature across private clients, but also has intermediary parties in jurisdictions such as South Africa, where we have model portfolio services. We have entry point services for the younger demographic on the Isle of Man. And on the other side of the business, we have a very experienced and capable fund administration business, which is not only a manager and an authorised sponsor and an administrator, but looking across a whole series of funds, which typically under one roof you wouldn't find. You'd actually go out to different parties to find a lot of the services that we offer. So from our point of view, an awful lot inside that room that we want people outside the room to understand, if that makes sense.
And quite different to being a subsidiary of a large group in London or elsewhere, with decision making essentially elsewhere, to be able to control the direction of the business from here, as you say, with strong, deep capabilities here, is something that's quite different, isn't it?
Oh, it's breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
If in terms of FIM, if something comes on the horizon, the board and the executive can work really nimbly, really professionally. The quality and depth of the board is probably second to none I've seen on the Isle of Man in terms of where it's been and where it's going. The development plans for the business wouldn't be possible without that sort of breadth of skill set. So the fact that it is HQ'd in the Isle of Man, as a Manxman, I'm really proud about that. The fact that we do have international footprints, doubly proud about that. And ultimately, as a business, we're not saying we don't need to be party to other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
We're just saying that a lot of the strategic directions coming from are based in the Isle of Man. Because,
I mean, particularly say in the funds arena, very competitive international landscape, all sorts of centres with different capabilities. How do you find you fit in terms of, I suppose, the size of funds that's a sweet spot, or different ways of working with jurisdictions that you could partner with?
Well, I think first of all is that having a team on the Isle of Man to do fund administration doesn't mean you just administer Isle of Man funds. So it's a global platform, and there are jurisdictions that, for example, multi-billion pound funds that are in jurisdictions that wouldn't be to our sort of business's needs. We're more specialist in our funds, specialist assets, specialist structures. The Isle of Man has a range of fund structures that people can go into, depending on the sort of oversight and sort of depth they want to go into. But for us as a fund administrator, we've got the accountants, we've got the COSECs, we've got the administration, we've got the technical ability to pretty much, once again, cater for most structures that are out there, both closed and open-ended. So the team are well versed in that. They've got over 16, 17 years experience doing that. One of the founders, Philip Scales, was ex-Bearings in terms of his fund experience. Another one of our founders on the investment side, Russell Collister. So the business has been built on two very solid founders and two very strong sort of foundation stones, if you like.
In the investment piece, I mean, what's the approach in terms of in-house, how you formulate your views and ideas of how you see the world and how you express that? I mean, how do you encapsulate part of the investment process and thinking in-house?
Yeah, our team, over 150 years experience around the table in terms of investment capability, CISI level 6s, CISI level 7s. We've got people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, right through now. Bottom up. Yeah. The house is not tied to any particular style, any particular pigeonhole. And I think if a client comes into FIM, if they're a growth orientated client, they're going to get a growth orientated structure.
Yeah.
That might be across private equity, commercial property, small cap, mid cap, large cap. We have the analysis around the table, we have the skills around the table. So once again, the general theme is that we will do what's right for the client in terms of risk adjusted structures, high end sort of like relationship management on top of that sort of relationship to make sure we stay in tone with the client, and ultimately performance, which we are going to look to get more externalized performance figures, which is very, very satisfactory. If not excellent.
It's a complex world out there in investing, isn't it? Globally, the macro environment hugely uncertain. Inflation roaring away. Investors need confidence, I guess, in those that are putting, like you say, tailored solutions together that account for their views and preferences. But the trust and relationships never more important, is it? In volatile times where private clients who have their savings and wealth, their nest egg. It's so precious to them.
It's an anchor point that a lot of other institutions, their client life cycle maybe not as long as ours. Clients don't stay with them as long as we do. A perfect case in point would be in the last 2 years, the old 60-40 portfolio has been smashed to bits. There's people who are sitting there saying, how could that happen to me? In FIM, because we are asset class agnostic, it goes back to risk parameters, and that we haven't had, say, for example, 50% in bonds for the last 2 years. We've had no mothership telling us to put 50% into bonds last year. So our investment team, me included, have actually aired away from the assets which didn't make sense. And then again, that falls into the client experience, what's right for the client. Who'd have thought UK gilts would have actually got as volatile as they did last year? Who'd have thought so many banks would have gone to the wall at the start of this year? So if you don't need to be in assets, we're a team that would say, well, we won't have them then. And nobody's going to tell us otherwise. But the proof of it's got to be in the delivery to the client and what the client experience is. And that anchor point, for us, a year or two might seem like a long time. In investments, it's a nanosecond.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's a long journey.
You just started the role. I mean, what are your key priorities, now that you're settled in? What do you see coming down the track for FIM Capital? What are you going to try and do over the next year and into the future?
We have got some really exciting things we're discussing in FIM, and they all gravitate about more, better, and bigger for the client. It's all revolving around the feedback we've had from our clients, which is very positive. It's about growth, it's about potential new jurisdictions, it's about potential new service lines, but it's about the fact we're never going to deviate from offering superb service across our investment and fund business. But the world's changing, we have got to look at other avenues, we have got to look at growth. I think inflation's nipped every company in the back of the Achilles this year. You've seen staff increases, we've seen energy increases, general cost increases. So growth is the way we've got to go, but we're not a growth at any cost business. We're a very steady business in terms of we want to do it properly, but for the right reasons, for the clients, for the staff, for every stakeholder, including the Isle of Man.
And you've got colleagues out in the field talking to intermediaries and clients, people like Paul Keane, who's been along to our networking dinner before in London and elsewhere. What's the team like doing that outward outreach? Where do they focus in on? Where might people catch up with Paul and the team?
I think in terms of catching up with Paul and the team, they'll probably catch up with you first.
Believe it or not,
for the team that we have, it's an amazing amount of ground they cover. From our point of view, we welcome people to give us a call the old-fashioned way if they want to, drop us an email, have a look on the website. In terms of our LinkedIn page or Facebook page, clients or potential intermediaries can contact us through every normal sort of standard. But we do like face-to-face still if it's available, and we do like telephone calls. They might sound a little bit old-fashioned, but it's and dare I say a coffee. But it's the way you build relationships. It's a people business, and we've got a great team who are out there promoting that people business.
Fantastic. Well, look, David, great to talk to you today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
We look forward to sharing this interview.
Appreciate it.
the latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.